One Piece Unlimited World Red attempts to bring the world of the manga to an action-adventure game, but it ultimately fails at that goal due to a repetitive gameplay structure and an abundance of technical problems. Let's get one thing out of the way. I am an absolute One Piece mega fan, and frankly, the series deserves a better video game adaptation than this. For those who aren't as familiar with the series as me, you will follow the adventures of Monkey D. Luffy, a pirate with magic powers who gathers a small crew and attempts to become king of the pirates by finding the world's most legendary treasure, the One Piece. So let's start with the core gameplay loop. The game is broken down into multiple episodes that can be accessed through a hub world. This hub also acts as a platform for all of your crafting vendors, but we'll get into crafting later. You embark on a quest, kill some enemies, grab some crafting materials, then fight a boss. Each of these components is rather weak, and they don't come together to be greater than the sum of their parts. If I had to compare the style of Unlimited World's gameplay and combat to any other game, it would be Kingdom Hearts. Team-based action, running through corridors, etc. As far as killing enemies goes, you will have to be mashing on the heavy or light attacks most of the time to take down enemies. Though this is par the course for action games, right? Is there any problem here? Well, yeah, there's such a limited pool of combos you can perform, it causes the combat to get far more repetitive far more quickly than most other games. Thankfully, your time in the story mode will be split among the Straw Hats as you see fit, with the exception of some specific story encounters. Some characters seem to have received a lot less love than others. I get that Usopp's a ranged character, but that doesn't mean he can't have combos. If you mash his attack button over and over, you will consistently get him just firing from his fling shot with the exact same attack over and over and over. Other characters, like Chopper, have a healthy set of cool combos, animations, and follow-up attacks. Let me elaborate on what I mean by follow-up attacks. When you finish executing a combo on an enemy, they will fall on the floor. Some characters have the ability to chase this with a button prompt and continue laying down the hurt, while others don't. If you aren't playing one of those characters, expect to sit there and wait for your enemy to get back up before you can continue pounding him. It brings such a terrible pacing issue to the combat that seems like it'd be such an easy fix. Now we get to loop back around to the game's crafting system. It's a disaster. There are far too many crafting merchants that make the entire system completely overwhelming. I feel like a lot of these guys could have been consolidated into a few important vendors rather than the horde that exists now. There's the poet, the factory, the restaurant, the general store, the farmer, the curator. I'm gonna stop myself there, you get the point. Trying to remember all of these vendors isn't the only problem with crafting, however. There are tons of crafting material, and none of them have meaningful visual representations. This makes it near impossible to remember which materials you need, and, worst of all, there's no way to save different blueprints that you'd like to craft and bring them between vendors. You're stuck having to memorize everything as you run around town. The game also uses a strange system to handle new gear. Gear is replaced by a system called words, which are stat boosts married to a random One Piece quote that you can assign to your characters. These words are just a bizarre way to handle gear. They usually give percentage-based stat effects and nothing more. These stat effects could have been baked into leveling up and the game wouldn't have lost any depth. It's an all-around dull system. Let's talk a little bit about graphics. The character models are pretty good and the game is bright and charming, but the linear environments look right out of a PS2 game. It looks like my Kingdom Hearts comparison was apt in more ways than one. Thankfully, most of the animations are excellent, and they did a solid job capturing the wacky special moves that all the Straw Hats have in their repertoire. The cast from the show is here to also reprise their roles. The Japanese cast, that is. They obviously do a killer job as you'd expect, but it's a shame the also excellent English cast isn't an option. It can be sometimes tough simultaneously reading the subtitles and focus on the action on screen. Sadly, the score from the show didn't make its way over like the cast did. The original soundtrack for the game does an admirable job, but it is ultimately forgettable. Forgettable is also the word I would use to describe both the story and the main villain of the game, Redfield. His design is sweet, but he doesn't get developed at all until the final chapter of the game. Redfield is a man of mystery and ambition, and you unravel this mystery by going through levels from One Piece history. Your quest doesn't take you from world to world in the same order they appear in the comic. Rather, Redfield makes you tackle your past by summoning copies of these worlds and their inhabitants to throw in your way. It feels like some weird middle ground between creating an entirely original world and just following the manga to a T, but to be honest I would have preferred either of those options than what we got. Also, technical problems. The PC version has a really strange input problem when using a controller. The fishing and bug catching minigames require D-pad input, which strangely are represented by the numbers 29 through 32 instead of up, down, left, and right. It makes it near impossible to distinguish which one is which, and weeks after launch, there is no patch in sight. Pop-In also rears its ugly head, worse than I've seen in a very, very long time. And lastly, the game's camera is terrible. There's technically a lock-on button, but it isn't super responsive. Anytime you get anywhere near a wall, expect not to be able to see anything and just mash buttons randomly as your camera flies all over the place. Unlimited World Red is a campy Japanese melodrama wrapped in a dated action-adventure game. Neither the action nor the crafting are good enough to stand on their own and make the game a compelling experience, and together they make the game a bloated mess. Let's hope the next One Piece game finally gives the series the love it deserves.